Joining us now to discuss Kennedy's confirmation is Dr. Robert Malone. He's a physician, biokemist, vaccinologist, and contributor to mRNA vaccine technology. Dr. Malone, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, with Kennedy now confirmed as head of HHS, what are the areas you're anticipating to see the biggest changes in?
So, Mr. Kennedy has a mandate from President Trump that he shall show, HHS shall show improvements in the health of American citizens within 12 to 18 months. In addition, Bobby has clearly indicated, aligned with the Make America Healthy Again movement, that he intends to refocus the HHS research and development enterprise, particularly NIH, on promotion of health rather than its current focus siloed on treatment of disease. This is a major shift. It may sound subtle, but it cuts through the entire HHS, particularly research and development enterprise, but also FDA and CDC, the focus being on promoting health rather than treating disease.
Expanding on that, Kennedy has promised to cut down the chronic disease epidemic by removing toxic chemicals from the nation's food supply chain and addressing the so-called corporate capture of federal health agencies. Now, he's got about 4 years, or as long as he sticks around, but we are seeing a very active court system right now. How much do you think he can accomplish under this administration?
I think I'm going to punt on that. It's a key question, and I don't mean to avoid it, but there's a lot in play right now, and it's not clear how much operational latitude Mr. Kennedy is going to have. He is still surrounded by what Kash Patel calls the deep state, people that are very embedded in this biodefense, pharmaceutical, academic, industrial enterprise that we were warned about so many years ago. But he certainly, I know that he is very aware of the challenges that he faces, of the entrenched interests that he is going to have to deal with, and with the constraints that have been placed on him during the confirmation process. Unfortunately, there's a number of senators that have insisted on having a voice and a role in appointments, even those that are not traditionally subject to Senate confirmation. So it's really going to depend on who Bobby can surround himself with and how they're able to navigate the complexities of both judiciary and the permanent administrative state.
Now, many are pointing to Kennedy's past as a vaccine skeptic. You had Republican Senator Mitch McConnell being the only holdout in his party to vote no for Kennedy, citing his own history as a survivor of childhood polio and how he credits vaccines with helping to save lives. Now, in your view, what can Kennedy do in terms of improving vaccine protocol as head of HHS without losing the public's trust?
I suspect and infer that we are going to see much more transparency. We are going to see a series of disclosures where the press, such as yourselves, have subpoenaed for Freedom of Information Act disclosures that have often either been slow walked or have been returned in highly redacted form. I anticipate that we will see boluses of key documents that will be shared with the public that will allow the public to be able to make their own decisions and assessments for what has transpired during the COVID crisis and what has transpired at the CDC and the associated committees that support decision-making at CDC and FDA. So we're going to see this come out, and then it's going to be up to the public to decide whether or not changes are priorities or whether we should maintain the same system that we've had for decades.
And Dr. Malone, you've actually worked on the inside, if you will, for a long time with the CDC. Looking at a 2022 Gallup poll, the public's opinion on the CDC's response to the pandemic took a dive. Their recommendations were criticized as biased or unscientific at times. How would Kennedy go about changing or reforming an agency like that in preparation for a future potential health crisis? Will this be a simple process?
Good question. It's important to remember that unlike many of the agencies, quote unquote, that we're dealing with, the CDC was not formally chartered by the legislative branch. And so that gives the Trump administration a lot of latitude to reorganize. There's been discussion about folding many CDC operations into other established segments of HHS, such as NIH and FDA. And I think we're going to see some, I suspect strongly that we're going to see some cuts. We're going to see redeployment of personnel. We're going to see some changes in CDC policy. And remember that the Senior Executive Service issued towards the end of the prior CDC director, Rochelle Walensky's term, a very critical report. It was covered in the New York Times that identified a series of failures at the CDC that needed to be rectified. Since that time, the CDC has, to a significant extent, been managed by the Senior Executive Service. And I think we're going to see some of those recommendations implemented. And I hope that we will see things like the end of the foundation for CDC that was used as a pathway for pharma and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to fund organizations like the Public Good Projects and its subsidiary Shots Heard Around the World that engaged in gang stalking against physicians such as myself that were raising concerns that turned out to be true, but were attacked by this surrogate of the CDC that was funded through the CDC Foundation. CDC Foundation is basically a slush fund, and I think it has to end. There's a number of things in the CDC that really need to be revisited, and I hope that Elon Musk and his Doge team get a chance to get in there and really follow the money, because that's what will really tell us what's going on and how things are being directed.
Dr. Robert Malone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.